2 hours later.
That's a little better. So, welcome to my first introduction video to OverBlast. Just to give you a quick little introduction to what OverBlast is, it is a production patch, a DAW, if you will, but not a total DAW. It's mainly just for beat production. If you're layering vocals, you're not going to want to use OverBlast. Stick to your main DAW. So the reason why I came up with OverBlast was, well, it all started about 3 years ago when I was watching a deadmau5 stream, and or maybe it was two years ago. Well, anyways, he was talking about when he was developing Serum, and he was mentioning some of the programming languages that they were looking at, and he kind of blew off Puredata, because you have to go through, jumping through so many hoops to get something desirable UI-wise. So yeah, he kind of blew that off, and me being the hard-headed person I am, I said, you know what? Pretty sure I can make something cool out of that. I initially started off just with a wave editor, and then I found a few more tutorials. I moved on to a sequencer, just a 16-step sequencer, and then just started building on it. I slowly just started adding ways to, like, instead of hard coding in samples to use, I added like a load button, and I just slowly worked my way up until I developed what is OverBlast right now. Backtrack a little. Before I found Puredata, I wanted to make a digital audio workstation. So I started with a Raspberry Pi, started tinkering with it, made a MIDI controller, just with a few buttons banged around on it inside of my DAW. Didn't really make any beats out of it, but it really gave me the idea to make a workstation. That's where I came up with this 3D render way back when, and I was surprised that I was looking through my laptop and I actually found it. So this is the initial idea that I had in my head when I wanted to make my workstation. So I figured out what programming language that I wanted to use, which was Puredata. I had my hardware. I still do have all the parts. It's just in pieces right now. It's not all put together because I've been focusing on this interface for so long. I just found it hard to want to assemble it if the software side wasn't anywhere being close to being done at the time. So now, moving along, let's say a few months, I started to develop OverBlast. I started to get familiar with Puredata, and I came up with a first version that didn't look anything like this next image, but it was pretty much everything except the UI. So if you are familiar with Puredata, you're going to be seeing regular bang objects or like sliders. So all of these windows that you're seeing wouldn't exist in the first version. This is actually a second or maybe third version, which was a complete rewrite. This current version that I'm working on right now is rewrite number 5. So even in between this version and what I've done, like, up until now, 5 rewrites of OverBlast, and each one got a little bit more tightened up and more cohesive and, just working smoothly. So that also got me thinking about workflow. So when I'm actually making beats, how am I going to be working with OverBlast? And then that's when I came up with this version is a lot more stable than the previous. And when I was coming up with this version, I ran into a problem of how I was going to select the patterns and the sequences, and that's the reason for the pattern and sequence selector at the top as it is right now. So you have up to 16 patterns and 64 patterns and 64 sequences to use when you're building your song. This is what I failed to implement in the previous version. So I had that knocked out of the way. I was ready to move forward. So refining things even more, I then came up with this. And as you can see, the pattern and sequence selectors are looking a lot more professional, if you will, a lot more streamlined, easier to look at, and from a workflow standpoint, it's just a lot more easier to use. So with this particular version, I started running into problems when actually like playing a song out, or the sequence, when a sequence is actually playing and going through the steps, it would chug. So basically things would start lagging, and the quality was just not good at all. Moving along, I came up with this next version, and the core of my latest version is pretty much this older version, but with a new UI. So with that said, the most current version. Here we are. This is our newest build of OverBlast. So this particular video, I'm not going to actually make any music. I'm going to go through all of the features, knobs and buttons and sliders that I have here. So starting from the top, we have a load, save, and create new buttons. So every time that OverBlast is loaded, it's going to create a blank temp file. Currently these three buttons are buggy, so we can't actually load and save, which isn't a huge deal just for this demo video. These are bugs that will be worked out before I actually attempt to make a release. On our next panel, we have our beats per minute, which is pretty straightforward. We can just click it and drag it, set our beats per minute. We also have a little bit more than your normal swing on any DAW that I know of. They normally don't set it up like this. You would have to go into, like, say, piano roll and add a humanized feature to your MIDI steps, basically, inside of the piano roll to get some sort of non-automatic mechanical type of swing. So I came up with my own solution to this, and that is to add a Humanizer Slider. Now this slider, it does some calculations with the swing, so that there's a slight chance that your actual note that's played will start a little bit before or after the actual step of the metronome. So that's how we would get the humanize feature. And we also have a mistakes slider, so the more that this is increased, onto our pattern and sequence selector, you can see now that we streamline this a heck of a lot more, all the way down to just 2 atoms. So instead of the previous sequence and pattern selector that you saw, those long bars and banks and all that are boiled down to these 2 number boxes. And to change a sequence, it's fairly simple. We can go to any sequence and click select any pattern, and you'll notice that the color just changed to blue. That lets you know that you're not on the selected pattern or sequence. So right now we're on pattern 1, sequence 5, and we can see that we're no longer on 5, but we know that 5 is the selected pattern, or pardon me, selected sequence. So we just click on it, click select again, make sure that it's selected. Moving along to the pattern to pool checkbox. Once you have a desirable loop, something that you like, you can send it to the loop pool. Before you actually do click the export button, you do have to be in edit mode, and then you'll be able to export the loop to the loop pool. And you would do that by clicking the checkbox and clicking export. Now this is going to make the whole sequence play out once and then stop, and then once it stops, or while it's actually playing, you'll see the this little black position marker, move along, and then stop once it gets to the end to show that it's stopped recording. And each sequence is tied to the corresponding play button. And something pretty cool, that when we go to a new bank, you'll notice that the shade of the color gets a little bit darker. And this is just to make things a little bit easier, and it actually isn't getting darker for some reason. Okay. Well, that's kind of cool since I'm doing the video. But, and I know exactly why that's happening right now, but, yeah, so I'll just make a note of that somewhere. So normally once you click a new bank, the color would be a little bit darker so that when you're programming your song, it's just a little bit easier to identify. Okay, so that's the loop pool export checkbox, which brings us to our MIDI feature, our not really feature, but our MIDI options, our settings, I should say. So we can enable MIDI in. We don't have a record button like on our sequencer for MIDI, so we can't record MIDI notes, but we can get around that to an extent if we have all of our samples loaded. And let's say we load all our samples, we learned all of the proper notes. Oh, and I should mention that each note that you learn will be tied to one sequence, or whatever sequence that you're selected to. So if we select pattern 1 and we learn a new MIDI note on whatever channel that it's coming through, that learned note will be tied to sequence 1. And I think I said pattern before, but I meant sequence. So whenever those notes come through, that sound, whatever that is loaded on sequence 1, is going to be triggered. And I apologize if that's a little convoluted, but yeah, that's just how it goes. So pretty straightforward. We can learn MIDI notes and then cue them with, you know, any sort of pattern that's coming through from an external MIDI sequencer. That is our MIDI learn, recording MIDI input. I did mention that. Our sequence controls. So our sequence controls are not all completely finished. So the fade in, fade out, and the effect sliders are currently not working. Let's see here. I'm just going to load a sound here, just like a drum sample, so we have something just to play around with. Okay, yes. Actually, I will load a loop, and then I'll cue that loop, and then I'll add another drum and a snare. So we just added our loop, and then as soon as we click this little pad button here, we're going to hear our sound. So just before I loaded that, I did notice that the beats per minute was 95. I'm just going to change our beats per minute to 95 just so that it matches. And if I click play here, and I just noticed that, that's interesting, the stepper didn't move along. And that's the first time that happened in a long time. So normally this green box will be chugging along as it goes through the steps. Oh, there it goes. and it might have actually done it the first time, but I just didn't notice it. So now that we have that one sequence there, we can go to a new pattern, or actually I'll just go like this to a new sequence. I forgot I wasn't actually going to make a beat, but I'll just load a few samples here. Bass drum. Actually, this will be a good time to demonstrate the Humanize feature. So I will add a snare just so we have something to swing around to here. Snare drum or a clap, snare drum or a clap, snare drum or a clap. Okay, so just to demonstrate the the Humanize sliders, I'll just let it play, and then I'll just kind of mess with the swing and the Humanize, and you'll be able to tell the difference. And this is all live too, so you could do this on the fly. And as soon as the swing starts to get extreme, like say past 30 or maybe even 50, that's when the Humanize feature really becomes noticeable. So you can get some really kind of fluent type of drum rhythms, and it's not going to sound automatic whatsoever because this is all random up until the point that you export the loop using the pattern to the loop pool. Everything's random, so every time that it's played you're hearing something random up until you export it. So now that I have that, I'm just going to make another pattern really fast here, and then I'm going to export them both to the loop pool just for a little demo of how the loop pool works. So this, I'll just make a different kind of five. Why is that still playing? Okay, now I'm going to add a new loop that's in a different pitch so that the second pattern gives us a different feel. Okay, so if I go back to 1, there shouldn't be anything there. Okay, that's good. Alright, everything's sounding good there. So if I go pattern 2? What was pattern 2? Oh yeah, our drums. actually going to go ahead English. Add a hi-hat here. Hi-hat. Just so we have a noticeable difference. Okay, and now that we have our two patterns ready to go, let's say these are all fleshed out. They're like a whole instrumental of like a short loop. Let's say we have everything in there. We're ready to export and make sure that we're in edit mode. Now this part is a little buggy right now, but when it releases you would only have to push export once, but right now I have to do it 2 or 3 times for it to actually register, and you'll see the play actually go along with it. And I think it might have actually done that because I was in a play mode, or pardon me, edit mode while I was playing, so there might be some things confusing here. Maybe we'll just see. Okay, so export. Yeah. Okay, so that's what it does. It'll stop it once, and then not this time, but the next time we'll have an exported loop. Okay, so you can hear another bug there. When it actually stopped, the last note is actually played, which is our first note for the loop, so that's why we just heard it play all the way through, like just the sample there. Normally, in a perfect world, that's going to be gone, and it'll stop playing as soon as, you know, when the recording's done. So we could actually click live right now. Just make sure these are all in the proper state. And of course, it's not going to play for me. Why is that? Okay, let's just try it again. Huh. Okay, well, that's new today. This was working last night. We would normally, in a live situation here, we would trigger the loops that we just recorded just by clicking the play button. So if I go back to the first pattern in sequence, okay, so that was the first one that we recorded. We're back in edit mode, and we're going to see the play position move along here when we record it. Oh, I forgot. So we have that one hit when it stops there, that bug. Okay, and then play. Is it going to play for me? Come on, play. No, see, it's... And normally Q says play, so I actually made one change earlier today, and I think I know exactly what that is as well. It has to do with the same reason that these colors are not changing. Because normally, like, say... when I'm on the second bank here, 17 to 32 are not showing. And when the patch is first loaded, it doesn't load all of them because they're not showing. And yeah, anyways, I'm just rambling now. So I apologize for that, those last few minutes there. So I'll just get back to explaining what the loop pool controls do. As I mentioned before, the banks will change the shade of whatever play button that you want to play or program. Each exported loop is saved as a wave to your loop directory that's inside of like the home directory of the patch. And that's pretty much it for the loop pool. Yeah, so just on to the wave editor. The wave editor is pretty straightforward. You could see this little box here. This will be for effects that you want to add, additive or subtractive effects. Currently it's not done, as you could see, but we can go ahead and do some things with the wave editor, like playing some waves, and I'll show you how the start and end positions and fade points work. I will choose a different loop this time. We can then normally, just like any other wave editor, set the start end position and then click truncate. Now there is a bug right now to where the truncate isn't working. Normally truncate means that it's going to get rid of like whatever's before the start position and whatever is after the end position and delete it, and then resize everything so that it plays, in the proper tempo, in the proper frequency, and all that jazz. So that's basically, super simple definition of what truncating does. So we do have a fade in and fade out option that shows us the milliseconds for that fade in or fade out. Now it looks as though the fade starts like way over here on the red mark, but this time would actually start wherever the start position is. So it won't start like way over at the beginning of the waveform. It'll start wherever the green box is and end wherever the green box ends. And inside of, we do have the play speed. We could actually play it backwards or forwards and then reset it. I'll just play this loop here. So there is a small bug where whenever I change the position, it will kind of jump, and then once it gets back to the loop, it'll play proper, which is weird. Still have to figure some things out there. So yeah, here's the loop that I loaded. And then we can loop it. And I will actually show you what I mean. So let's say we want the start position to be like right here, and our end position to be right here. You're going to notice that it'll actually start playing like somewhere in the middle. It won't start playing where it should. It'll actually adjust itself. I noticed that it seems to be whatever the distance is or whatever the position is, and then multiplied by 2 or something to that effect. I don't know. But yeah, dealing with bugs. And then you see, as soon as it went back to the loop, it went to the right position, but it seems to be only when I play it, it'll start right there. I don't know. Just a weird bug. But that pretty much wraps up the main part of the wave editor. We do have ways of getting audio in to OverBlast. We'll demonstrate that right now. So we just click whatever sort of input that we want. We have a loopback device, that means like whatever's coming through your computer or going to the DAC, I should say, will be recorded. So we can loopback record using OverBlast. I'm just going to do a little beatbox here. And then let's say that was like a super dope beatboxing skill. I would then go in, truncate, click the truncate button, save it as a new sample, and then choose a unused sequence, load it to the sequence, and then trigger it wherever we would want it in our song. And then one thing to note is that we would have to re-export whenever we add something new. It's not automated, so whatever you export to the loop pool is going to stay in the loop pool as long as you save your project. What else? Yeah, so that's the mic input, the loop back, and the 2 oscillator synth, which used to be in this long blank spot here, but I had to remove it. More development is needed. Onto our song builder. The song builder is the part that took the longest to figure out, mainly because it involves some advanced tactics, if you will, to use with Puredata. The easiest way to do it is to show you is to actually do it. So let's say that these samples are actually playing as we exported them. And yeah, so I would make sure that we're in edit mode. Click the checkbox and make sure we're in program mode, and you'll notice that all of the buttons here changed to add. That means they're ready to be added to the song builder. So we can easily just go, like, say this was a full song. Oh. Okay. So it might be working. Okay, so it's a little buggy still. I'll just clear it out and then add 2 first. Oh, it did work. Just for some reason, they're not playing from here. Okay, so that's good news. Yeah, so the problem that I thought about the colors changing, like the shades, is probably linked to the same thing, because we could trigger them. We could trigger the loops just by testing. So yeah, it's just a matter of, you know, building whatever sort of pattern. But this is yeah, so you just heard right there, this is another bug that I have to deal with. All of the loops want to trigger at once whenever something new is added, so it gets a little monotonous, a little bit annoying. But that's what debugging is for, right? So now that we're, let's say this is a full song laid out, everything's all good to go, we could just play the song now. What? Why did that happen? Oh, there we go. So you could actually see there's a slight little hiccup there that happens before it changes to the next loop. That's not supposed to be there. Yeah, it's just a little stutter that I have to figure out where it's coming from. So yeah, that's how we would play out a full song and build it using the edit mode for the song builder. Oh, really? It's like that. I just got an error here. Well, actually, quite a few errors, but... So, when I go to play, like I can play this here, no problem. and that's just me clicking the object inside of the song builder. But if I go and click play, come on, that's the error that I get inside of the song builder currently. So as mentioned, really buggy, and this was working last night, so it's kind of funny that as soon as I want to go do a video, something goes haywire, but hey, what can you do? So I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, that wraps up this video. Went on a heck of a lot longer than I wanted it to. In the next video, I will be doing a lot less talking and just making some music. That is assuming I can get these few bugs kind of worked out. But if you are a Puredata developer and you feel like you want to contribute, by all means get in touch with me. Yeah, if you are interested in working on some sort of side project, a little contribution, I don't know how I'm going to pay you, but I don't know, we'll figure that out. Yeah, so this is Reggie Retro, everybody. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for taking an interest in OverBlast. I will go into more detail about some of the features as I'm using them in the next video. So peace out. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and all that good stuff. Alright, have a good one, people.